12 spine-chilling true horror stories, exposed. The terrifying night I was haunted in LA. Sarah, a single mother working graveyard shifts, returned to her Los Angeles neighborhood under cover of dawn. Normally, the palm trees and worn lawns welcomed her, a familiar comfort after exhausting hours. But tonight, as shadows stretched under the flickering streetlights, an unshakable dread settled in her stomach. She checked her phone and gasped. "Did you hear? There have been disappearances in our area." "Stay safe," her friend texted, sending a jolt of fear through her. "Brush it off." She tried, but the weight of those words clung stubbornly to her mind. Drawing up to her house, she spotted her neighbor, Bill, the sweet man known for his church volunteering, standing too close to her porch. He waved, his smile broader than usual, but the way he lingered made her skin crawl. Friendly. Disturbing. For months she felt safe here. Now, shadows flitted beyond her vision. The benign facade of suburban life started to crack. Incredibly, days passed. But the chill never left. She could have sworn she heard whispers while nursing in the half-light of the hospital, words just out of reach. Sometimes, she thought she saw something stirring in the corner of her eye, a quick flurry that vanished whenever she turned. Exhaustion must be warping her senses, she reasoned. The whispers crept into her dreams, distorting into laughter, the kind that made her dart upright in bed, panting. Then came the report. A woman missing, last seen just blocks away. Panic gnawed at her gut. Hadn't she noticed those shady figures lurking after midnight? Fear rolled down her spine. Confront Bill. She hesitated but summoned the courage when she spotted him outside again. "Bill," she started, voice wavering, "you've been hanging around my place a lot. Everything okay?" His eyes darkened, breaking into a laugh that felt cold and hollow. "Just being neighborly, Sarah. Just watching out for you and Oliver." To him, she must have been a paranoid single mom. But he didn't get it. Sarah felt the very ground beneath her tremble. She needed to act, protect Oliver at all costs. But when she reported her concerns, the authorities dismissed her. The implication was clear: single mothers can be dramatic, overprotective. The weight of their disbelief settled like a lead weight. Did her concern mean anything if no one believed her? She started asking around, probing into the neighborhood's past. Whispers of disappearances turned into nods of know-it-alls. Old legends floated back up from the shadows. Stories of a man named Bill. Horror tales tangled in neighborhood silence. Now, standing at her window one night, she saw him again, lingering in the moonlight. Something crackled in the air. The whispers returned, louder this time. "Sarah, come out and play." The voice teased, a sinister melody in the darkness. Blood rushed to her ears. Heart racing, she pressed against the glass, breath caught in her throat. Bill stood outside, eerily still, a smile creeping wider than ever. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The echoes of the giggles circled around her mind like vultures. There wasn't a shred of innocence left in Bill's gaze. She had trusted him. And in that moment, the nightmares converged with reality. The familiar home turned into a prison, a facade dripping with malevolence. With her heart hammering, she faced the window. Shadows around her home gathered and deepened, the sense of safety slipping away entirely. She knew she had to escape. But how? With Oliver fast asleep, the darkness whispered promises and warnings alike. Would she confront Bill? Or would she run? The choice lingered like dread in the air, a lethal silence enveloping her suburban world as the shadows began to close in. The air grew thick with tension. Sarah's mind raced, a whirlwind of terrifying options. Confront him. Hide. There were no good choices. She turned away from the window and glanced back at her son's bedroom door, listening to his soft, rhythmic breathing. He was so innocent, so vulnerable. Panic bubbled inside her. The thought of Bill touching Oliver made her stomach churn. She took a deep breath, trying to gather her shattered nerves. Whatever Bill was, no matter how friendly he'd seemed, she sensed the darkness twisting behind that smile. She grabbed her phone and texted her friend Caroline, desperate for backup. "I need you to come over. It's urgent." But what if he saw her texting? The thought punctured her resolve, and she pocketed the phone. Ducking low, she crept toward the front door, silently cursing the ancient hinges that threatened to squeak. Just as she reached the door, she noticed the flicker of movement outside. Bill was still there, his figure now casting an unnatural, elongated shadow against the porch light. He whispered again, "Sarah, it's late. Why not just step outside?" The way he said it was more of an order than an invitation. She hesitated. Would he hurt her if she opened that door? What did he want? Suddenly, Oliver stirred, the sound of his tiny voice breaking through her fright. "Mommy? Is everything okay?" Her heart sank. What if her son wandered into the chaos? She couldn't let that happen. With resolve, she whispered back, "Stay in bed, honey. Just go back to sleep." She took courage from his innocence, her grip tightening around the doorknob. Maybe she could confront Bill, maybe she could bluff. "What do you want from me?" she half shouted, hoping to surprise him. His smile, if possible, stretched even wider. "I just want to talk, Sarah. I'm worried about you, about Oliver." A chill raced down her spine. The words had a sickly sweet tone, coated with something far darker. It was not the reassurance she needed, it was a twisted reassurance she feared. In a panic, she turned back, moving to gather anything she could use as a weapon. Her eyes darted around the kitchen, finally settling on the metal meat tenderizer. With it gripped tightly in her hand, she considered how far she'd go to protect her child. Whatever fears she felt about Bill paled in comparison to the motherly instinct electrifying through her veins. She had to buy herself time, maybe just enough to reach the front door without him noticing, but as she crept back toward the door, she heard a soft rustling from the living room, a sound like the scrape of something heavy being dragged along the floor. Her heart dropped. Where had Oliver gone? She rushed back, dread filling her every pore. In the dim light, she saw the shadow beneath the hallway. "Mommy!" came his cry, breaking clear and piercing the veil of night. At that moment, all thoughts of calm vanished. She had to reach him. Suddenly, the walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating her. "Stay right there!" Sarah shouted, charging toward the hallway, her grip tightening on the meat tenderizer. But as she stepped into the dark corridor, her breath hitched. Bill's laughter echoed behind her. "Oh, no, Sarah, you don't want to play that game." She swung around, adrenaline thrumming through her. The end of the hall blurred for an instant, shadows twisting, coiling like snakes. Would he take Oliver? She took off, sprinting toward the living room, terrified. The front door stood ajar, beckoning her to escape. But just as she reached for it, she turned back one last time. Bill stood watching, eyes glinting with an unsettling delight. "Don't worry, I'll be waiting for you." Both those words wrapped around her, trapping her heart in a vice. Just when she thought she'd found the way out, horrible possibilities rolled like thunder in her mind. What if he had plans that involved both her and Oliver? Her pulse raced as lightning sparked horror danced in her vision. She was close, but how could she escape the darkness lurking behind the familiar face? Time was running out. With frantic determination, Sarah made the split-second decision, the only choice she had left. The night would soon reveal its true intentions, but could she withstand the grasp of the man she once called a neighbor? As she dashed for safety, shadows writhed around her, and the truth loomed closer than ever. The air felt thick, almost electric, as Sarah launched herself toward the living room. Every footfall echoed ominously, slicing through the suffocating silence. Her heart thundered in her chest, a wild drumbeat urging her to hurry, to escape. She could hear Bill's laughter trailing behind her like a shadow, chilling and mocking. "Mommy, where are you?" Oliver's small voice trembled through the darkness, laced with fear that only sharpened Sarah's urgency. She couldn't allow him to feel scared. Not now. The living room lay ahead, dimly lit by the sliver of moonlight streaming through the window. As she burst into the open space, Sarah scanned every corner, her eyes fixated on the couch, the coffee table, the corners that seemed to stretch into the void. Where was Oliver? Oliver! She shouted, a desperate cry piercing the silence. "Mommy!" came his answer, this time muffled. The sound was tangled with something else, a scraping sound, like nails on a chalkboard. The noise twisted her stomach. She followed the noise, pushing through the living room toward the hallway that led into the darkened pass. "Stay right there," she called, her voice steadier than she felt. With each step into that abyss, dread clawed at her insides. Shadows curled ominously around her feet, growing more menacing in the dark. When she reached Oliver's bedroom door, it was ajar. Her breath caught. "Oliver! Mommy, I can't find my toy," he whimpered, the sound slicing through her soul. She spotted him on the floor, huddled by the bed, his tiny hand reaching for something underneath. Then, she saw it, a slender, white object sticking out. Was it a toy? Sarah knelt, reaching for him just as the truth unfurled, slamming into her like a wave. "Don't!" she screamed, her voice raw. Oliver froze, eyes wide, filling with instinctual fear. For that moment, everything felt frozen, caught between a heartbeat and a breath. The object, it wasn't a toy. It was a long, thin bone. Bill's laughter rumbled back in the living room, now louder, more menacing. He was playing with her, his game dark and twisted. Racing, her maternal instincts kicking into overdrive, Sarah lunged forward, pulling Oliver toward her chest. "Come on, sweetheart. We have to go." She felt a chill creep up her spine, something ancient and predatory. Bill's shadow appeared at the doorframe, stretching inhumanly long, a smirk plastered across his face, a mask of evil pressed against the mundanity of their lives. "Where do you think you're going?" His voice was low, crawling like slow poison into her veins. "Don't be foolish, Sarah. You know I can always find you." Panic exploded in her chest. She had to act. Gripping the meat tenderizer with white-knuckled intensity, she positioned herself between her son and the doorway. "Get away from us." The threat hung heavy in the air. She felt an unbearable weight of his gaze, the way it bore down on her, as if he were wreathing them all in his darkness. But within that tension, a surge of courage ignited. "We're leaving," she declared, bold and strong. With Oliver grasping her hand, they bolted past Bill, who stood still, the embodiment of unfathomable horror. As they raced for the front door, shadows seemed to twist and reach for them, a web closing in. But Sarah would not let that happen. "Run!" she urged Oliver, who clung tightly as if she were his only lifeline. Just as they reached the threshold, Bill hissed, anger snapping through his voice. "You think that's enough to protect you?" The door swung open, slamming against the wall. Night air filled her lungs as she burst outside, dragging Oliver behind her. Safety was almost within reach, but the ominous echo of Bill's words echoed in her mind, a slithering whisper of fear. "Run!" she urged, adrenaline fueling her as they launched into the night, but it was too quiet. Too empty. As they sprinted down the driveway, Sarah dared to glance over her shoulder. Bill stood in the doorway, still, watching them with that sickening smile, the moonlight glinting off his eyes. A thought pierced the moment. What if he had already planned for this? Escape? With bile rising in her throat, she picked up her pace, determination flooding her veins, but uncertainty gnawed at her insides. Was he waiting? Was he always close behind? Ahead loomed the shadows of the trees, dark sentinels lining their street, but were they sanctuary or another part of his twisted game? fear twisted the knife deeper. She and Oliver raced toward the unknown, but would they ever truly escape the grip of his darkness? The night pulsed with chilling uncertainty as she clung to her son, praying the dawn would bring safety before the terror struck again. But in the heart of the night, the darkness lingered, waiting, always waiting. The shadows loomed larger, swallowing them whole as they hurtled into the trees. Sarah's breath was ragged, a desperate gasp straining against her throat, but she focused on Oliver. He was still tucked close against her side, his small hand gripping her tightly. Each step they took echoed in the silence, every rustle of leaves amplifying her fears. As they entered the forest, the dense foliage cocooned them. It was darker, or was it just her imagination? The moonlight barely penetrated the canopy above, casting shifting patterns on the ground. Suddenly, the laughter that trailed them before seemed to melt into the wind. She tried to convince herself it was gone, but her heart raced at the thought of it slinking back into existence. "Mommy, where are we going?" Oliver whispered, drawing her focus back to him. His innocence cut deeper than any knife. She swallowed hard, willing herself to sound brave. "We're finding a safe place, baby. Just hold on tight." But as they pressed on, the air thickened even more, heavy with something she couldn't quite place, like the smell of damp earth mixed with decay. Anxiety twisted through her. "We need to keep moving," she urged, pushing onward. In an instant, a twig snapped nearby, piercing the tension. Sarah froze, her heart in her throat. She could feel Oliver trembling against her, his grip tightening. Caution kept her still as she scanned the darkness, peering through the shadows that danced with every flicker of movement. "Mommy?" Oliver's voice quavered. Suddenly, she heard it, a whisper, soft but distinct. Sarah, it drifted through the trees like smoke, wrapping around her. Cold dread washed over her. How could he be here? "Run!" she hissed, her voice a frantic whisper as she pulled Oliver along. They stumbled deeper into the dark woods, branches clawing at them, tearing at her clothes. With every breath, the fear coiled tighter, threatening to suffocate them both, but the laughter. It followed, weaving in and out of the trees, an echo of madness. It reverberated in her mind, mingling with the instincts screaming at them to survive. They were on borrowed time, and she could feel Bill's presence closing in like a predator. Just then, Oliver stumbled, falling to his knees. "Mommy, I'm tired." Tears streamed down his cheeks, glistening in the faint light. She dropped down beside him, fiercely cupping his face in her hands. "No, sweetheart. We can't stop." But just as she spoke, the trees seemed to shift. A silhouette formed amongst the trunks, tall and forbidding. "Sarah," the voice taunted her, sending icy fingers crawling along her spine. With a sudden spark, she recalled a place not far from where they were, an old shed, long abandoned but still standing. Perhaps it could hide them from him, give them a moment to think. "Oliver, we need to go to the shed, all right? Can you do that for me?" He nodded, eyes wide and shining with a mix of terror and determination. They rose, urgency pushing them forward. Shadows flickered along the path, twisting like phantoms trying to catch them. The shed came into view, a dark silhouette against the night sky. "Almost there," she urged, racing toward it. When they arrived, Sarah pushed the creaky door open, heart pounding. Inside, the air felt stagnant, thick with the scent of old wood and rust. They slipped inside, heartbeats echoing in the small space as she pulled the door closed. The darkness swallowed them whole, but they were alive. For now. But as she turned to Oliver, something clamped around her heart like a vice. A noise reached her ears, not from outside but from within the shed, a low, rumbling laugh that reverberated off the walls. The darkness tightened, crushing hope. She wasn't alone. And Bill was closer than ever. As dread washed over her, the outline of a figure began to materialize in the corner of the shed. Her breath caught. Would she and Oliver ever find true safety again? The figure lingered in the corner like a dark storm cloud, thick and impenetrable. Sarah's pulse raced, the sound deafening in the suffocating silence. Her instincts screamed at her to protect Oliver, but her body felt rooted in place, paralyzed by the chilling laugh that bounced off the walls. She gripped his arm tighter. "Stay quiet," she whispered, and Oliver nodded, his small face pale with terror. The shadow shifted, creeping toward them with an unsettling deliberation. Each movement echoed the laughter, soft at first but growing louder, more sinister. "You thought you could escape me, didn't you, Sarah?" The voice slithered through the air, curling around her like a noose. She could almost smell the decay of his voice, the memories long buried rising to the surface. "Why won't you just leave us alone?" She managed to stammer, her breath catching. The figure chuckled, a low rumble that sent shivers rattling through her. "Alone? Oh, but you never were, not really. I've always been right here." The laughter rattled the very beams of the shed, vibrating through her bones. Sarah glanced at Oliver, his wide eyes reflecting the fear that consumed her. She had to move. She had to do something. "Oliver, I need you to stay close to me. We will find a way out." She could feel the shadows pressing in, closing off their escape, but the figure advanced, and panic surged. She fumbled through the shadows, hands searching for something, anything, to defend them. Her eyes darted around until they caught the glint of an old rusted tool hanging on the wall, a pitchfork, its prongs dulled but still menacing. With a surge of desperate resolve, she lunged for it, gripping the handle tightly as the figure stood just feet away, its twisted features now visible in the dim light. Eyes cold and hollow, lips curled in a sneer. "That won't help you, Sarah. You can't fight what's already inside of you." The words sliced through her like ice. Memories flooded her mind, nights shrouded in shame and sorrow. Had she brought him here? Had watching him fall apart all those years been an unending nightmare? "Shut up!" she screamed, swinging the pitchfork wildly, desperation fueling her strength. The metal glinted in the dimness, but it passed harmlessly through the figure, like grasping at mist. Its laughter crescendoed, sending Oliver into a frantic sob. "Mommy! No! I'm here," she shouted, pulling him close again. The laughter turned into screeches, a cacophony of torment, drowning out any hope. She couldn't reason with this demon stalking them. It was the very essence of her past, clawing its way back to the surface. "Run, Oliver!" she commanded, shoving him toward the door she had just entered. He hesitated, glancing back at her with wide, frightened eyes. Trembling, she spun around, facing the figure who was growing larger, its distortion stretching her fear to a breaking point. "You're not real!" she yelled, shaking her head, trying to dispel the darkness that blurred her vision, but Oliver's small voice broke through. "Mommy, please!" As she turned back, the shed began to splinter apart with each sound of laughter, wood cracking and breaking as though the very structure chose sides. Sarah, there is no escape in that moment. She knew they had to leave or be consumed. With one final, desperate heave, she clutched Oliver's hand and propelled them toward the door, but the inside of the shed twisted chaotically, lines of darkness snaking around, coiling like serpents. They stumbled into an unnatural brightness. Just as the laughter reached a shrill pitch, it felt like the walls were closing in around them, thudding in time with her heart, every beat echoing with dread. Then, everything stopped, the quiet felt suffocating, and she dared to glance back. The shadows had vanished. "Mommy?" Oliver's voice shook her from her trance. "Let us go," she said weakly, fighting the suffocating weight of fear. They stepped out and squinted against the sudden brightness. But ahead, the real nightmare awaited them. The forest stood still, the trees shrouded in silence, waiting. Only now, there was no laughter behind them, just a lingering whisper she could almost make out, "I'll be waiting." As they navigated deeper into the woods, dread curled tighter around Sarah's heart, a consuming darkness lurking just beyond sight. Were they truly free, or had they merely traded one horror for another? Her soul chilled at the thought. In the distance, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a glinting shadow that wasn't just a trick of the moonlight. Something was watching them, and it was moving closer. Every instinct screamed at Sarah to run, to keep moving away from that shadow that bled into the night. Yet, her feet felt cemented to the ground, the weight of her memories anchoring her to a past she desperately wanted to escape. Oliver's small body trembled against her side, and she instinctively pulled him tighter, shielding him from the unknown that lurked in the forest. "Mommy, I don't want to go into the woods," Oliver whispered, his voice breaking her focus. "I know, baby," she replied, her heart heavy with the undeniable truth that they couldn't stay out in the open. "But we need to find a safe place. Just stay close." They began to move deeper into the looming trees, each step echoing around them, the crackling leaves underfoot like the snap of broken bones. Shadows danced in the periphery, teasing her vision, and every rustle in the underbrush made her heart race as though it might leap free from her chest. The cold air felt thick, and the night stretched before them like an endless, dark chasm. With each step, panic rose. Were they being followed? Could whatever watched them from the shadows be that very same figure, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? "Mommy," Oliver's voice trembled again. She glanced down, noticing his small legs were beginning to tire, fatigue was creeping into the child's limbs. "No. No, we need to keep moving," she urged, forcing herself to sound more confident than she felt. The thought of stopping filled her with dread. The dark voice had promised to be waiting, and she knew that she did not want to find out exactly what that meant. Just then, a sharp snap pierced the darkness, a sound sharp enough to make her freeze. She turned abruptly, eyes darting, heart hammering. There, just behind a thick cluster of trees, she thought she saw a fleeting glimpse of movement too quick to distinguish, but its presence sent icy fear racing down her spine. "Did you see that?" she whispered, urgency bleeding into her voice. Oliver's small face was scrunched in concentration, dark eyes wide, filled with silent terror. Suddenly, another rustle, closer this time. "Mommy. I'm scared." "I know, Oliver. Just hold my hand tight," she pleaded, squeezing his fingers before she forced herself to look away from the growing dread behind them. They stumbled onto a narrow path that cut through the trees, leading further into the underbrush. The air around them became suffocating, each breath felt heavy as though the night were trying to pull them under its control. Sarah pressed onward, desperation clawing at her throat. In the back of her mind, she could feel the figure pulling at her thoughts, whispering secrets of her past, seducing her with lies. "You are not free. You are never free, Mommy. What if it gets us?" Oliver cried, panic rising in his voice. She paused, turning sharply to reassure him, but as she did, the shadows shifted again, and a strange chill swept through the air. Suddenly, Oliver's hand slipped from hers. "No!" she screamed, darting after him as he took off, driven by an instinct Sarah couldn't fight. He ran without looking back, deeper into the darkness. "Oliver!" But her calls echoed hollowly, swallowed by the trees. The shadows erupted around her, thick as smoke, and the laughter returned, a cacophony of torment that jangled her senses. Despair clawed at her lungs. "Keep going, Oliver!" she cried, but he was lost now, swallowed by the night, pulled down a path swallowed by darkness. With sheer terror surging through her veins, Sarah charged after him, running blindly, the world around her spinning as the laughter crescendoed. It grew louder, more chaotic, closing in around her. Then everything froze. Time halted, a surreal stillness taking hold, only her frantic heartbeat breaking the silence. As she stumbled through a clearing, she finally spotted Oliver ahead, barely visible at the periphery of the trees. "Mommy!" he called, relief flooding his voice, but a deep, cold dread smothered her unease that he was standing still, staring at something beyond her reach. "Oliver, no! Don't move!" But it was too late. The shadows surged around him, and the darkness thickened, twisting in a way Sarah had seen before. She gasped, and in that moment, the chilling realization sank in. They hadn't escaped the horror. It was just beginning emerging from the shadows, an idea loomed like a fresh nightmare. She was turning to run, but screams caught in her throat when she finally realized she was right back where it all began. The shed loomed before her, impossible and merciless. And this time, the doors were wide open, welcoming as darkness seeped back into her soul. The air felt electrified as Sarah stood before the open doors of the shed. A sickening pull, a magnetic force, beckoned her forward. It was a trap, she could feel it bubbling to the surface of her terrified mind. Behind her, Oliver's tiny voice clawed through the stillness, "Mommy. Stay there." She yelled, almost a growl. Panic surged anew as she turned her back to the shed, her eyes frantically searching for her son. The shadows danced like puppets, and dread tightened around her throat. Oliver. He'd been right there, only a moment ago. Her heart thundered against her ribs as she took a shaky step backward. The laughter echoed around her, mocking, mingling with the rustling leaves. "Mommy." She spun around, forcing herself to remain focused. It was dark. Too dark. She couldn't make out anything beyond the faint silhouettes of the trees. The feeling crept back in the sensation of being watched, of danger lurking just beyond her vision, and then she saw it again. There, in the night, a flicker of movement too fluid to be a trick of the light. A figure, shadowy and elongated, melting back into the depths of the trees. A chill swept through her, rising clammy against her skin. Was it only her imagination, or did she hear a whisper on the wind? "You're too late, no. Oliver." Her scream ripped through the velvet silence, echoing like a dirge in the night that he was just a child, lost in this nightmare, and every second felt like an eternity. Gathering strength she didn't know she had, she ran toward the shed, ready to confront what lay inside. She shot a desperate glance towards the tree line, hoping to catch a glimpse of her baby boy. But the shadows flickered again, closer this time. Her pulse raced. She reached the threshold of the shed and peered inside, the darkness refusing to relent. Rotted wood and debris littered the floor, an earthy smell dredged up memories she wished to bury. A noise, a soft whimper pricked her ears. It came from deeper within the shed. "Mommy." Oliver's voice again, small and frightened. "Oliver. I'm coming." She stepped inside, the darkness swallowing her whole. The door creaked ominously behind her, and she hesitated, sensing that crossing into this void would seal her fate. But she had no choice, her child's voice pulled her further. "Mommy, it's dark." His voice quivered, a pitiful plea that cut through her heart. "Just a little further. I'm right here." Yet fear gnawed at her, wondering what else lurked in the shadows. The walls seemed to be closing in as she moved deeper, each breath feeling like inhaling dust and despair. Suddenly, a burst of cold air chilled the back of her neck. She spun around, heart pounding, but there was nothing. The shadows were just shadows, painted against the uneven walls, keeping secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to uncover. "Oliver." She called again, fear igniting her resolve. Without warning, a low growl emanated from the darkness, setting off an alarm in her gut. It was not just the shadows now. Something was there, hungry, waiting. The whimpering stopped. "Oliver." Panic flooded her voice, clenching her throat. From the corner of the shed, a shape stirred, coalescing out of the dark. Sarah's breath caught, her mind racing, adrenaline kicked in. That was her son. With instinct overriding reason, she turned on her heel, sprinting toward the door as the growl morphed into a cackle, her surroundings distorting with every step. Cold fingers of darkness reached out, snatching at her clothes, her hair, her sanity, but as she barreled through the door, she stumbled to a stop. Night had fallen anew outside, the trees casting monstrous shadows that whispered promises of horror. The woods before her twisted and shifted, and the path that had once led away from the shed was now closed off. In the darkness, Oliver's faint plea echoed back to her. Mommy. Hatred and dread surged in equal measure. She was caught in a loop, bound to this horror. Was it her fault? Did she bring this upon them? And there it was again, that whisper slithering through the trees, creeping through her mind like cold fog. You can't escape. The world blurred as Sarah turned back toward the shed, her heart twisted in a vice of fear and desperation. What if the only way to save Oliver was to confront what she had buried? With a deep breath, she made her choice. She would face the darkness, but as she took a step toward the open door, the laughter began anew, this time louder, more derisive, swirling around her like a storm. And she realized, with chilling clarity, she was not just facing the past, something far worse was waiting inside the shed. And then, from the darkness, two eyes glinted red, reflecting the trembling lights of her soul. The air grew thicker as Sarah braced herself, the oppressive weight of anticipation pressing down on her. Everything felt amplified: the rustle of leaves, the distant cracking of branches. Each sound seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of its own. She could feel the sinister laughter wrapping around her like a snare, drawing her back toward the shed. The glowing red eyes remained fixed on her, smoldering in the dark with an almost predatory curiosity. "Mommy." Oliver's voice came again, a choked whisper that sliced through her resolve. He was close, but where? Another growl erupted from the shed, deeper this time, a warning. This was no ordinary threat, it felt primal, ancient, a dark force that understood fear. "Stay there!" Sarah screamed, her voice cracking, but deep down, she realized that was a lie. Oliver needed her. But so did the shadows that grew and twisted like living creatures, hungry for chaos. Heart racing, she took a hesitant step back toward the entrance. She felt the cold wooden frame beneath her fingertips. This was a horrific symphony: her son's voice, the low growl, the mocking laughter that danced through the trees. They blended together like a madman's lullaby, compelling and threatening. Sarah, a soft hiss slithered from the depths of the shed. It sounded familiar, dangerously so, a voice from her past, a lingering ghost. Memories surged, threatening to consume her. "Join us." "No. I'm not going back," she shouted, now ready to unleash her fear. With renewed determination, she crossed the threshold once more. Inside, the shadows thickened. The air felt like ice. Each breath was a struggle against the mounting dread. "Oliver," she called, forcing herself to venture deeper. The interior of the shed unfurled before her, a living embodiment of her worst fears. Old tools dangled from rusty hooks, cobwebs draped like funeral veils. She moved cautiously, the floor creaking ominously under her weight. And then she saw him, a small shadow huddled in the corner. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. The growl returned, reverberating off the rotting walls, and the small figure shifted, revealing not just Oliver but something else. The laughter erupted again, and the shape began to morph, stretching and twisting as if mocking her vision. She couldn't tell where her son ended, and the grotesque shadow began. Cold sweat trickled down her back. "Oliver?" she asked again, heart hammering in her chest, uncertainty clawing at her gut. The shadow flickered, seeming to absorb the light around it. "Mommy." The voice was laced with something sinister, a distortion she didn't recognize. It was not just her son's voice, it held laughter and pain, echoing from a dark abyss. Everything around her shifted, the walls quaking, shadows writhing. A sharp pain in her chest forced her to stumble back as the world warped around her, as if the shed itself were alive, a vast, menacing entity bent on claiming her. She gasped for breath, panic surging. "No, this isn't real," she cried, battling against the sensation of being pulled under. "You can't have him. You can't have us." And then, the air cracked like thunder. From the darkness coalesced a figure, a man or a monster, she couldn't tell. It stepped into the dim light, holding a twisted smile that froze her in place. The figure pointed toward Oliver's trembling shadow. "Do you really think you can save him? To win against the dark, you must first embrace it." As air leaked from Sarah's lungs, dread seeped into her bones. The shadow blend of Oliver shifted, and he began to merge with the figure, their outlines fading into one another like ink spilling into water. In that moment, clarity pierced through her terror. The laughter morphed into something more sinister, and she realized she was not just fighting for Oliver. She was fighting against everything that had haunted her, everything she had buried, but how could she confront it? She needed to know the truth of what bound them to this nightmare. As she stepped back, the space warped, the shadows elongating like fingers reaching for her. Eager to pull her into the depths of despair, she could feel the darkness closing in, the figure laughing no, taunting her. And there it was, standing before her, an invitation wrapped in malice, with a heartbeat thrumming in her ears. Sarah's eyes widened. "I'll do it. I'll face it," she declared against the howling wind that encircled her, but as she stepped forward, determined, she could hear Oliver's voice whisper just above the chaos, "Mommy, don't run." The laughter echoed again, louder now, as the shadows curled tighter. Was running away the only option? Or could she truly unearth the powers lurking in her own past to set them both free? In the flickering light of that dreadful shed, uncertainty clawed at her resolve, daring her to step into the dark, and a new fear crept forward. What if she didn't find Oliver at all? And what if the truth waiting for her inside was more terrifying than she had ever imagined? The darkness condensed around Sarah, suffocating and cold, like a heavy fog pressing against her skin. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears, drowning out the haunting laughter that spiraled from the shadows. The figure loomed before her, a grotesque confluence of man and nightmare, whispering promises of power and despair. "Join us," it hissed, reaching out with a long, skeletal finger toward the flickering silhouette of Oliver, who was trapped within a crawling disarray of shadows. There was a tremor in the little boy's voice, a plea that twisted her heart. "Mommy, please." Fighting through the panic that gripped her throat, Sarah took a cautious step forward. The floorboards creaked beneath her, a mournful sound echoing like a warning. She couldn't lose him. Not now. "Oliver," she called, forcing strength into her voice, even as the walls seemed to pulse in agreement with the figure's laughter. But instead of her son stepping away from that dark vortex, the figure only tightened its hold, pulling her son deeper into the gloom. "You have to choose, Sarah," it said, the words a venomous whisper that curled tantalizingly around her mind. "Choose?" she echoed, confusion fighting against her rising temper. "Choose what? Your power or your son?" The words pierced her like glass. In that moment, the shadows began to swirl violently around Sarah, tightening like a noose as the memories she had buried flooded into her mind, times of anger, despair, moments when she had surrendered to darkness herself. The sinister laughter that had taunted her felt eerily familiar, as if mocking her very essence. "No. I want tea." She staggered back, shaking her head to dispel the suffocating clutches of her past. "I choose him. I choose Oliver." And just like that, the shadows reacted violently. They writhed and twisted, a storm of anguish exploding within the confines of the shed. The figure snarled, its face twisting into an expression of rage, revealing sharp teeth that glinted in the dim light. "You cannot save what you do not understand," it roared, sending a tremor through the ground. Sarah felt the air shift, turning heavier, oppressive, as if it threatened to crush her. The once still corners of the shed lurched forward, closing in like the jaws of a trap. Shadows clawed at her, dragging her downward, as fleeting visions of Oliver began to flicker in and out. His terrified face, his soft laugh, and the joy of simple moments together twisted into a nightmarish reflection of the dark power swirling around them. "Mommy, stop. It's too," Oliver cried, his voice warping into an agonizing wail. With sheer will, Sarah pressed forward. Every step felt weighted, dragging her into despair, but she couldn't stop. She had to reach him. The thought of losing him transformed her fear into raw determination. "I will face the darkness," she shouted into the relentless void, her voice piercing through the cacophony. "I won't abandon you, Oliver." With each declaration, a shiver of light flickered around her. The shadows hesitated, wavering. She felt a surge within herself, a clawing power that echoed her acceptance of all her fears, her regrets, the darkness that seeped through like a stubborn vine. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, as if feeling the intensity of her resolve. The laughter began to dissipate, cracking under the weight of her fierce proclamation. "See. You cannot save him." The figure spat, struggling against the light that surged from Sarah's inner strength. You're nothing without darkness. Wrong, she breathed, feeling a connection ignite between her and Oliver, a tether they shared that even darkness couldn't sever. She charged forward, pulling all the strength she had into one final assertion of love. I am everything with him. As the light burst free from her chest, illuminating the shed in blinding clarity, shadows screamed. The figure clawed at its face, howling in anguish as if the very light could erase it from existence. Mommy! Oliver cried out, his voice sharp as glass in the chaos, the light curling around them like a protective hug, but was it enough? Would this battle finally end, or was there more waiting in the depths of the shadows? The light began to flicker, and as the corners of the shed darkened once more, an ominous whisper lingered in the air, chilling Sarah to her bone. This is only the beginning. What had she awoken? Was it truly the end, or an even darker fate awaiting beyond this moment? The brilliant light enveloped Sarah and Oliver, swallowing them whole against the darkness that loomed. Sarah felt a warmth wrap around them, pushing back the shadows that once suffocated her. She stood firm, heart racing, locking her eyes on the figure as it writhed in agony, its sinister laughter replaced by cries of desperation. No! You cannot take him from me! It screamed, the confidence peeling away, revealing a flicker of fear. Mommy! Oliver called again, his small voice filled with wonder and hope. The glow built between them like a shield, pulsing with Sarah's urgency, her love pouring out from every corner of her heart. I'm here, baby. I won't let anything happen to you. Raising her hands, she felt her own power surge, the memories, the shadows from her past, everything that once haunted her, all harnessed into one undeniable truth. Her love was stronger than the worst fears, stronger than the darkness. You think you can destroy us? She shouted, every ounce of conviction behind her words. I choose him. I choose love over fear. The light expanded, filling the shed, illuminating every dark corner. The figure shrieked, clawing at the warmth that chased away its grasp, its form twisting into a grotesque representation of Sarah's own buried demons. They fought, lunging toward each other as shadows shrieked, the echoes of laughter obliterated by her fierce determination, but in that moment, Sarah didn't just see the figure. She saw herself, the fears she held close, the regrets that clung like shadows, the grief for things left unsaid. I see you. She yelled, grounded in a profound certainty. You're a part of me, but you will not win. In declaring that truth, she stepped into the very essence of her fear, not turning away but embracing it. Suddenly, everything shifted. A blast of warmth washed over them, and the figure's laughter turned into a wail of despair. You are nothing without the darkness. It roared, clutching at hollow remnants of its own existence. No. Sarah countered, her voice trembling with fierce defiance. I am everything with my son. With a final burst of determination, she propelled herself and Oliver forward, towards the heart of the figure. The light grew brighter, transforming it into nothingness. The shed trembled violently, roots tearing apart as the shadows dissolved like sand slipping through fingers. Then, silence. Sarah found herself outside, the dawn breaking around her, illuminating the world with a tender embrace. She gasped, relief washing over her like the first light of day. The forest had transformed, harsh shadows were now gentle silhouettes. She turned anxiously to find Oliver finally safe, standing beside her, wide-eyed yet stable, his small frame grounded, strong. Mommy? His thin, trembling voice broke through her thoughts. Did we win? With tears cascading down her cheeks, Sarah gathered him tightly, kissing his forehead. Yes, sweetheart. Together, we won. As the colors of the morning painted their surroundings, there was no darkness left to haunt them, only the soft, reassuring sigh of the wind and the whisper of the dawn. She looked at her son, feeling the fierce love swell within her heart. They were free. The air felt light, new, untouched by the shadows that once gripped her tightly. That a lesson lingered, a reminder that the past could never fully disappear but that its hold could be broken with courage. Looking into Oliver's trusting eyes, she felt a transformation. Sarah was no longer just a woman haunted by shadows. She was a mother, a warrior, claiming her story with love. They turned to leave the forest, stepping boldly into the sunlight, hand in hand. Ahead, their path glimmered with promise, wildflowers blooming in an array of colors. As they walked, the warmth of a fresh day enveloped them, wiping away the last traces of darkness. "Let us go home, Mom," Oliver said, smiling, and it was the most beautiful sound. With each step deeper into the light, they moved forward together. You need to subscribe now to the channel for more exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us spread the word and keep our community thriving.